Cronus Network.
I just got done watching Spider-Man No Way Home. I enjoyed the film. It was a lot of fun. Very comic book centric, which you would expect from a comic book film. But in the last couple of years, comic book films have been taking a lot of strides to just kind of be more nuanced and fit into different genres and kind of blend and transcend. This is definitely catering to the comic book crowd. It is legit a comic book come to life in the best possible way. It's a multiverse film, as you may have gathered from the marketing, so we're going to get a merging of different universes in this film. And yeah, it some of it is clunky, some of it is a little bit awkward in the way it fits together, but it's just so much fun that you kind of forgive its failings. And that seems to be something that's common with film fans in regard to Marvel. It's not so much that Marvel makes perfect movies, they don't. It's just that they're so much fun, you kind of forgive where the seams don't quite match. And that is the case here. The acting's actually really solid. Everyone's performance was great. I bought into all of it. Chemistry between everybody is fantastic. All the villains from the previous Spider-Man films are here for the most part, and they do a great job of reprising their roles. Except for Electro. Electro doesn't quite seem like the same character overall. They kind of reinvent him, and don't get me wrong, he works better in this film than he did in the previous one, but it's kind of a little bit jarring. Just his appearance is different, and they kind of like half-baked explain why that is. But again, forgivable. Doc Ock is definitely one of the standouts here. Great performance. It's great to see him back. It's great to see his arc come full circle. Green Goblin steals the show. He is definitely the villain of this film, and I mean, he's just fantastic. It's incredible. It's almost like no time has passed. The performance is exactly on par with what was in the previous Spider-Man incarnations, and it's satisfying. Very, very satisfying. There are some issues, as I said, with the film. Mostly just, a little bit of a rough patch here and there, but ultimately it's a recommend from me. Let's go ahead and take a deep dive and get into the particulars, talk about the nuances of this film. I watched it on a Screen X, which was great. The picture quality was great. The sound was great. The Screen X dynamic actually really worked well for this film because of the swinging and the motion. It really did give you an immersive feel. So if you can, this is actually a film I would recommend to watch on Screen X. I imagine IMAX would be fantastic as well, given the variables I just mentioned. So without any further ado, let's get into the deeper dive, and thank you.
I'm going to address a few spoilers during the course of this review. Quite a few. It's regarding who is in the film and what general themes are at play, as well as a major death. So if you want to remain pure heading into this flick, it's time to click away from the review. If you've seen the flick, well, then you know what is up, and we can discuss. So consider this your spoiler warning. As I've said, this being a multiverse flick, there are a few awkward bits patched together in order to make the whole thing function, but this is not detract from the fun factor and the unbelievable amount of fan service on display here. The trailer pretty much gives you all you need to know about the plot. Peter finds himself in some uncomfortable hot water regarding Mysterio's death. There is a media backlash.
Spider-Man was responsible for the brutal murder of Mysterio.
He finds Doctor Strange and persuades him to cast a spell that will undo his turmoil. This is actually more to do with Peter's loved ones than his own needs, so it's not as selfish as it sounds. However, Peter is responsible for the consequences that unfurl as a result of the spell going wrong. Villains from alternate universes start to pop up, compelled to cross over because magic. Lizard is pretty forgettable, as is Sandman. Electro works better in this film than he did in his first incarnation, but that is because he got a complete redesign. The film feels the need to explain this, and it's somewhat McClunky. The electric energy in the Prime universe functions differently than it does in his, and that changes how his powers materialize. No more god awful glowing blue monstrosity. You know, electricity working differently in his world would explain that terrible origin. He fell into a vat of electric eels. The flick actually does make a joke about this. The results make this a better film, so all this is forgivable. Doc Ock and Green Goblin are the highlights as far as villains. The performances here are spot on, and these villains actually serve the plot rather than just feeling as if tacked on. Together, this group forms the Sinister Five. We're one short of the six made famous in Spider Man lore, though number six does appear in a mid credit scene.
The film doesn't use the classic lineup, despite this lineup having been possible with who is currently in existence cinematically. However, who is in the Sinister Six has proven flexible, and the idea was to bring villains from other dimensions to fight our Peter. What is more disappointing here is that having these villains all in the same flick doesn't make them the Sinister Six. They have no plan and act like random forces of nature. A supervillain team, they are not. The MCU utilizes the trope of a hero creating a villain or situation that they need to deal with rather often. This is why Thanos was so refreshing. He was a force of nature that came from outside the Avengers' dealings. The trailer created some doubt on Strange's willingness to cast a spell that impacts the entire world. This quickly gave rise to the theory that this wasn't Strange at all, but a multiverse Strange, or perhaps Mephisto. The Sanctum Sanctorum is frozen over. Has hell literally frozen over? All of this proved to be just fan speculation. Fueled, of course, by the trailer using an alternate cut of the sequence where Peter asks Strange to cast a spell. In this alternate cut, it's played less somber and more mischievous. Thankfully, in the film itself, this plays way better. To be fair, Strange is more in character during the film than he is in the trailer. He feels sympathy for Peter, who is barely a young adult, and Peter helped to defeat Thanos, save half the universe.
Sorry to bother you, sir.
Please, we saved half the universe together. I think we're beyond you calling me sir.
So, this sympathy is not misplaced. The dynamics between the two here work, and while Peter did cause the situation,
Stop tampering with the spell.
Oh my god, Ned. He's my best friend. Oh, my Aunt May should really know.
Stop talking!
he ultimately serves the greater good, learning not to take the easy road out, but to travel the path of a true hero. With great power comes great responsibility, and, well, you know the whole bit with that. It is, however, the theme of redemption that runs heavy in this film. The general plot revolves around Peter's realization that these villains were plucked from their universe after their deaths. It is their respective fates to die fighting Spider-Man. This is not entirely consistent with each villain, but the rules of the spell are murky. It's gone wrong after all. And as Strange says, multiverse is a concept we know dangerously little about. Peter inevitably rebels against Doctor Strange, who would rather just let these villains face their doom. He then embarks on a quest to, fix them. This tracks, as each villain is a tragic transformation story. Repair the trauma and repair the person underneath. Overall, Green Goblin is the true villain of this film, and he is every bit as entertaining to watch as he's ever been, and somehow even more evil and twisted. If you want a reason to hate him, that is provided when he kills Aunt May. Aunt May, who had been advocating for Goblin's redemption, pays the ultimate price. This scene is emotional and carries the weight that it should. Goblin largely instigates the villains to resist being fixed. The lot of them take off on a rampage, and it's chaos at large. This is Peter's ultimate test. Is he strong enough to overcome the desire for revenge? Will he stop pulling his punches and beat Goblin to death? Well, this isn't the Zack Snyder's film, so no. After losing Aunt May, Peter no longer wants to redeem these villains. He wants vengeance against Goblin, and it's at this point that the other Spider-Men from alternate universes begin to emerge. Andrew Garfield's Spidey and Tobey Maguire's Spidey show up, compelled to help our universe's Peter, and perhaps set a few things right in regard to their own respective villains. Their interactions here are highly entertaining, and we get information regarding what happened to each Spider-Man after their stories cut. The performances of all three Spider-Men are solid. The players work the script for all it's worth. There are some funny quips, but also some somber, poignant moments. Being Spider-Man comes at a cost, and these older Spider-Men bear the scars. Our Spidey is freshly cut and has yet to heal. The Spider-Men of this past cinematic universe, they help Peter back from the edge of darkness, and they help him succeed at redeeming the Sinister Five. This is plot convenience, so they can wrap up the villains with a neat little bow, but Strange is in the mix, and this pesky spell has grown so unstable that Peter must sacrifice his existence in the hearts and minds of the world in order to set things right again. Basically, Spider-Man's identity is preserved, but along with that, everyone forgets Peter Parker. This is a bit murky. Forgetting he is Spider-Man is one thing, but it's unclear why people seem to forget him as Peter Parker altogether. It's literally like he's been erased. Hence, No Way Home. Peter is left alone, having now lost Tony, Aunt May, his MJ, best friend, Happy, basically everyone. He decides to start his life anew. This is basically the story of Spider-Man becoming an adult, and it opens up a wealth of story possibilities for the character. This needed to happen in order to develop the character and advance the narrative into unforeseen territory. We don't know what's coming next, but given the Daredevil cameo, a team-up is likely at some point. At least I hope. After all, Daredevil also enjoys a secret identity. This for sure would be a film that I would want to see, and I'm sure many other fans would echo that sentiment. The bottom line on this film, ultimately, despite having some rough edges in regard to how magic and multiverse works, this film is entertaining and fun. It's wholesome at times, sickeningly wholesome, but there are some dark themes running throughout. This flick is definitely a recommend, and it stands as a solid MCU entry. It's certainly more fun than a lot of MCU entries, and that's saying a lot. The flick is definitely working to entice folk into theaters. I've not seen this venue this packed since before the pandemic. If I had to assign the film a numeric score, strictly speaking within genre, I'd feel comfortable with a 7.5. I wouldn't call you crazy for scoring this film an 8, but it definitely isn't anything lower than a 7. So I'm going to split the difference and go 7.5. Check it out, and don't forget to comment on this video. The engagement helps the channel. Hit like if you enjoyed my dive into the flick. If you've not really done so, please subscribe and help me build a film and geekery community. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.